Hello, and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host, Rob. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Echo Knight fighter. And I really quite like the Echo Knight. I've never actually had a chance to play one yet, but I really want to do so. They just seem really cool. They've got a lot of mobility. You've got some neat tricks that fighters usually don't have access to. A lot of times in combat, your fighter's options are, do I swing or do I swing harder, And, maybe you action surge or not. There are times when you might be able to strategically block a choke point or something like that, or maybe you want to grapple or something. I'm not saying there's no strategic options, and obviously a subclass like a Battle Master, for example, or an Eldritch Knight with your spells, there are moments where you get to use your maneuvers, your spells, or like an Arcane Archer's shot, like a Grasping Arrow or something like that, and you can use those for strategic effect. So I'm not trying to say that fighters have nothing. I'm just saying that this subclass really brings that to a whole new level in a way that fighters don't normally have access to. So anyways, let's just jump right in. At level 3, you get Manifest Echo, and this is really the big ability, right? So as a bonus action, you can manifest an echo of yourself up to 15 feet away in a non-occupied space that you can see. The echo is gray, it's translucent, and it's a magical image of you that lasts until it's destroyed, dismissed by you as a bonus action, or unless you manifest another echo or you are incapacitated. Note your echo is not a creature, it's not an ally, it's not an enemy, it is a magical object, which means that, if your echo is next to a creature in combat, your party's rogue, for example, can't use the echo for a sneak attack or something like that. But it also means your echo is actually kind of hard to target with a lot of spells. A lot of spells specify that they have to be a creature, and this is not a creature. So, bear that in mind. That is kind of interesting. Your Echo has 14 armor class plus your proficiency bonus. It only has 1 hit point, and it has immunity to all conditions. In other words, it can't be blinded, it can't be poisoned, it can't be grappled or restrained, etc., etc. If it has to make a saving throw, it uses your bonus for the roll. It has the same size as you and occupies its space. So it's not like, you can't just move through it. It still physically blocks that area, right? You can mentally command it to move up to 30 feet in any direction, no action required. And if it ever ends your turn more than 30 feet away from you, it is destroyed. There's one exception we'll get to later, but, it's very specific. So you can move it 30 feet, but, if you end your turn more than 30 feet away from the echo, it's done, right? As a bonus action, you can teleport by swapping places with your echo at the cost of 15 feet of your movement, regardless of the distance between you. That is a very interesting option there. I mean, you could literally put your echo up in a window where you can still see it, and then switch places with it, and now you're up in the window. The fact that you can move it 30 feet away from you and then swap places with it and then spend another 15 feet of movement does mean that you could actually move fairly far on your turn. You might mean you end up sacrificing your echo, but note there's no limit to how many times you can summon your echo. It just requires a bonus action, but it's not tied to your con mod, strength mod, proficiency mod, nothing. You can literally summon an echo every turn on your bonus action if that's what you really want to do, and they never run out. That is pretty ridiculous. Anyways, when you take the attack action on your turn, any attack you make can be from either your space or the echoes. You make that decision for each attack. So if you were level 5, for example, and you had a couple attacks around, you could make one attack from your location, one from the echo, both from yours, none from the echo, both from the echo, and none from yours. It's not actually the echo that's attacking, though. It's kind of like you attacking through the echo, essentially. So even if you're 15 or 20 feet away or 30 feet away, and you decide, I want to attack the creature next to my echo, you do so, but not the echo, just to make that clear. When a creature you can see within 5 feet of you, 5 feet of your echo, moves at least 5 feet away from it, you can use your reaction to make an opportunity attack as if you were in the echo space. Now, I was going to originally save this for the end, but we might as well talk about it right now. Because obviously when you think about opportunity attacks and moving creatures, our mind naturally goes to things like Sentinel. And Sentinel does work with this because it's as if you were the one making the opportunity attack in the Echo space. However, note that it also specifies the creature has to be moving away from the Echo. So if you combine it with, say, Polearm Mastery, of course, gives you an attack of opportunity when something comes into your range. You couldn't use that in combination with somebody approaching the Echo, because this opportunity attack has to be somebody within 5 feet of the Echo, moving at least 5 feet away from the Echo, just to make all that hopefully clear. Anyways, that's all just the first ability. You also get, at level 3, Unleash Incarnation. When you take the attack action on your turn, so note it has to be on your turn. Here's in case something gave you an option of attacking on somebody else's turn, right? Just to make that clear. So when you take the attack action on your turn, you can make one additional melee attack from the Echo's position a number of times per day equal to your Constitution modifier. You gain all uses of this when you finish a long rest. So let's say you've got 16 con, right? Reasonable enough. That means up to 3 times per day, your Echo can make a melee attack in addition to your attacks if you're taking the attack action. So again, to use that example of a level 5 fighter, maybe you attack once from your location, once from the Echo's location. You then decide that you're going to use your Unleash Incarnation ability with conjunction of this, and now your Echo can make an attack basically as if it was you, because it has like mirror images of, you know, you essentially, right? Note that if you use this with an action surge, you're actually going to get that attack twice. Just throwing that out there. This is also pretty interesting. The only real downside, though, is that it specifies that it has to be a melee attack. So if you're going with a crossbow expert and you're using a hand crossbow, maybe a sharpshooter, you can still do some like funky things where you try to like use your free interaction to draw like a rapier or something, and then it could use the rapier, but then now you've got 2 hands, and that means the next round you can't use your bonus action attack with your hand crossbow unless you ditch the rapier. So it does start getting a little weird there, but just, you know, still just mentioning it, right? Anyways, Echo Avatar, level 7. As an action, you can see through your Echo's eyes and hear through its ears. During this time, you are deafened and blinded. You can sustain this for up to 10 minutes, and you can end it at any time, no action required. While this ability is being used, your Echo can be up to 1,000 feet away from you without being destroyed. Note, though, that your Echo cannot, like, open doors, for example. It can't, like, pick up objects or anything like that. So, as a scouting tool, while very nice because it's something that fighters usually don't get very much options to do this kind of thing, you know, you can't give it like an invisibility potion, right? You can't cast Pass Without Trace on it because, you know, it's not a creature. It can't drink a potion. So there are still a lot of restrictions, but it's not necessarily a terrible ability. You know, I like the fact that you could have this scouting option. You could send it 1,000 feet away. You could use it to, like, listen in on somebody's conversations potentially, or spy on people, as long as you have some way of keeping it hidden that does not require, like, casting spells on it or having it use objects, right? So, you know, I think a clever player could probably find uses for it here and there. I just don't think it's probably going to be a staple ability that you're going to use a lot. But still, you know, I still think it's probably better than Student of War, so whatever. Level 10. Shadow Martyr. For some reason I keep wanting to say Master, but it's not Master, it's Martyr. So you can make your Echo throw itself in front of an attack directed at another creature you can see. So before the attack roll is made, you can use your reaction to teleport the Echo within 5 feet of the creature that you're trying to, you know, protect, into an unoccupied space, of course, you can see. The attack roll now has to target your Echo instead of that creature. You You can only use this once per short or long rest. But, you know, that's not too bad. The fact that you can, like, it doesn't necessarily automatically even hit. It's just now it has to attack your Echo. And it could miss, you know. I mean, your Echo could have at least 17 armor class by now, right? You know, so if it misses, your Echo's still alive. And if it hits, your Echo obviously gets destroyed, so it has, you know, 1 hit point. But you can always just summon a new one next round, right? And this is pretty decent ability if you're able to, like, protect an ally who's in danger of, like, maybe going down. I also like the idea of using it to protect, like, maybe one of the casters in the party who's concentrating on an important spell, and I don't want them to lose concentration, for example, right? But, you know, you could even use it to, you know, protect somebody just for the heck of it because you're about to take a short rest anyway and you've got the ability back, right? So, you know. I like the fact that you at least get these kind of options, right? You've got some nice defensive options. You can use this thing to get more attacks in. It does a lot, you know. You can scout, you can teleport and switch places with it. It's crazy good. Level 15, Reclaim Potential. When an Echo of yours is destroyed by taking damage, you gain 2d6 plus your con mod worth of temporary hit points, provided you don't already have temporary hit points. You can use this a number of times, equal to your Constitution mod, and you gain all charges after a long rest. So a couple things to note. It does specifically say that you gain these temporary hit points provided you don't already have temporary hit points. I tried to find anything I could about whether or not that meant that you just can't gain the hit points. Like maybe I have 4 temporary hit points. Usually if I gain more temporary hit points, they don't stack, but I can choose which ones I want. I couldn't find any clarification on whether or not this works normally like that, or whether or not I simply don't even have the option of gaining these temporary hit points, because it's worded very specifically. And every time I looked up stuff on the Echo Knight, even on like Sage Advice, mostly I just found stuff on, you know, using Sentinel with my Echoes. So, and whether or not it could like carry things and count for flank attacks and stuff like that. Both no, by the way. Either way though, you know, it does mean that like you could end the effect of your Echo by making another Echo, but that's not going to trigger the temporary hit points. It specifically says when it's destroyed by taking damage, right? But, I mean, that's a pretty decent source of temporary hit points too, because then the next round you could just make a new one with your bonus action. Finally, level 18, Legion of One. You now get 2 Echoes that can coexist. Both die if you try to make a 3rd Echo, so, you know, probably don't bother doing that anytime soon. Anything you could normally do from one Echo's position, you can now do from either one. You also regain 1 use of Unleash Incarnation. That's the one where your Echo can attack, if you have none. And, you know, that's also really nice, right? Because now you can just be using it essentially every combat, right? As soon as you roll initiative, you'll get 1 more use of it back again for this combat. So that's not too bad. Note though that you can't attack with each of those Echoes if you use your Unleash Incarnation. You just get to use either of the Echoes to make that attack with, right? Overall though, like I said, there is so many interesting things about this subclass. I really, really, really like it. The idea that you can, like, you know, basically just teleport almost at will. I mean, it does use your bonus action, but, you know, just swapping places with your Echo, there's a lot of interesting potential there. There's also things where, let's say somebody's behind cover, but your Echo has clear vision of them. You can choose to make your attack from the Echo's location, especially if you're using like a ranged weapon or something, right? And maybe you don't have sharpshooter, for example, right? Or they have full cover, right? That's another potential. But now all of a sudden you use your Echo's location, you can attack from there, and you don't have to worry about the fact that they had full cover. There's a lot of interesting, you know, things you can do with that, right? Especially if you're rather strategically minded. So, anyways, I've already mentioned Sentinel. I might as well mention Polearm Mastery as well. There are some drawbacks with this compared and then combining it with Polar Mastery. Number one is that usually Polar Mastery works very, very good, and I'm going to throw Crossbow Expert into this as well, since it's kind of the ranged version of Polar Mastery in some ways, at least for the extra attack-wise, right? In both cases, though, a lot of that feature comes from the fact that you can use your bonus action to make more attacks. Now, that's fine if your Echo's not constantly dying, but since he has 1 hit point, and since you're kind of incentivized to play a melee character so that he can make melee attacks whenever you use your Unleash Incarnation ability, it means he might be dying a lot. So if you're constantly having to recast him, you're not going to get a lot of use out of that butt-end attack or your offhand, being able to like reload your hand crossbow, for example, right? So there are a few things to be aware of. That being said, I don't think the idea of a ranged build using something like Crossbow Mastery, who just wants to be able to swap locations and maybe like get past cover and stuff, is necessarily a terrible idea. We'll talk about that more in a minute. I don't know if it's the most optimal, but there is potential there. Anyways, so like I said, Polar Mastery, fairly interesting. We've already talked about Action Surge plus Incarnation. Fighting styles. I think that like the superior technique fighting style, allowing you to choose like Battle Master maneuver, might not be a bad choice here. I mean, in general, Battle Master maneuvers are pretty decent. It's usually easy to find like 1 or 2 that are pretty good, and having that as a fighting style is not a bad thing, especially if you're not going to be taking something like archery. I don't really like the idea of going 2-weapon fighting on this build because of the same problem we just mentioned with Polar Mastery, except that probably even worse, honestly. It's because you're not going to be able to use your bonus action consistently to make those offhand attacks if you're constantly having to resummon your Echo. And I don't know that a lot of the other fighting styles really give me that much. Something like Duelist is really nice at low levels, that extra +2 damage on each of my hits. But as I get higher and higher, even getting 2 or 3 attacks around, you're looking at 4 to 6 damage, but you're fighting stuff that has 4 times as many hit points as you did when you first got this fighting style, right? And so, once again, your damage is barely going up, but their hit points are going like this. It's one of these fighting styles that's really good in low-level campaigns, but doesn't necessarily scale particularly well. And that's not a shot at Duelist. I still like Duelist quite a bit. I'm just saying that on a character like this, I think that since I'm probably not going to be going archery unless I wanted to specifically make an archer, right? I'm not going to be using 2-weapon fighting almost guaranteed on a character like this, because I want my bonus action to be able to make more echoes of myself, right? That leaves me with Great Weapon Fighting Style, which honestly, Great Weapon Mastery is an amazing feat, but the Great Weapon Fighting Style is kind of lackluster. If I was playing, like, say, a champion, and I get a second feat at level 10, or not feat, sorry, a second fighting style at level 10, and I wanted to use great weapons, taking something like, superior technique or defensive, and then combining that with great weapon fighting style is not necessarily as bad. But if it's the only fighting style you get, So, I think that's not a bad option, though. Other feats, I mean, obviously, like, Lucky's always good. I think something like the mobile feat is pretty decent normally. I don't know that you necessarily need it on this character because you're so mobile already. But if you wanted to be able to, like, move even further and use your teleports, because your teleport does use 15 feet of your movement, instead of having only 30 movement or whatever, maybe 35 if you're like a wood elf or something, right? You could be, adding another 10 feet on top of that. You do have a very fast mobile character. And it does mean that you can, like, close in on people a lot faster. And that's one problem that melee characters sometimes have. It's great if you're, like, fighting somebody in a 5-foot by 5-foot room, but that's not usually the case. You're fighting in a broom closet or whatever, right? Usually, though, it's far more likely that the enemies are like 80 or 60 or 150 feet away from you, and now you're, dashing every round, or just taking arrow fire for like 3 straight rounds of combat or something. And that gets kind of ugly sometimes. So, you know, I like that you have a lot of strategic options like this. As far as, I might as well mention some like multi-class ideas. I really don't know how much I want to multi-class on this character. I feel like the fighter, like the core fighter abilities just work so well in conjunction with the, you know, the basic kit that you're getting from Echo Knight that I'm a little less incentivized to multi-class with this character than I might be with some others. That being said, we've already talked about the idea of Action Surge plus, your Unleash Incarnation. You always could take, say, like 3 levels of Gloomstalker, get that extra attack in the first round, which also does extra damage. And then if you Action Surged and use Unleash Incarnation, you would literally be getting both of those abilities twice in that first round of combat and doubling your own attack. So, for example, a 5th level Echo Knight fighter, 3rd level Gloomstalker, would normally be able to make 2 attacks a round, but 3 attacks in the opening round. And 4 in that opening round if you combined with Unleash Incarnation. Which would mean that if you did all that and Action Surged, you'd have 8 attacks around already. If you also had something using a bonus action attack, you could potentially be attacking 9, which is getting pretty crazy on an 8th level character. Just mentioning that. Another good alternative, if you did want to go melee, 2 levels of Barbarian, or maybe even 3 levels of Barbarian, but 2 for Reckless Attack, combined with Great Weapon Mastery, of course, is always excellent. So that's not a bad option either. You know, especially if you don't think you're going to get the 20th level, and you might not ever get your 18th level ability. You're never going to get your 4th attack around. You think the campaign is probably going to go to, like, you know, 10th, 12th, 13th level, somewhere in that range. Going 5 levels of fighter, then dipping into one of these other 2 for, you know, 2 or 3 levels, and then maybe going back fighter again, can give you a big boost. Especially like in the Gloomstalker case, a lot of like front round, like first round Nova damage. That can be really, really impactful in a combat, right? And like I said, just grabbing something like, you know, 2 levels of Barbarian, Reckless Attack, Great Weapon Mastery, smashing people with a great sword. That can be pretty nice as well. Then, you know, then your Incarnation attacks, or your Echo attacks once, you Action Surge, you're still getting in lots of attacks and lots of damage. So those are my main thoughts. However, I did have a subscriber who specifically asked me to take a look at a Dexterity build. And I do think that while the Echo Knight really seems to loan itself quite heavily to these strength type of builds more because of the melee focus, and kind of away from the 2-weapon fighting type of style because of your reliance on a bonus action, there are some potentials to maybe use like something like a longbow. Like I said, the hand crossbow might not be your best option, especially because part of the attraction of the crossbow expert feat is that if somebody doesn't close in with me and they're in melee range, I don't suffer disadvantage, right? So it's not just that I get the option of making a bonus action attack, it's also I don't have to worry about, you know, being in close range of people. But as the Echo Knight, I could just swap places with my Echo and not have to eat an opportunity attack or anything like that, right? So there are other ways for me to like disengage and move away that don't necessarily require me to, you know, have to have like a crossbow expert, right? So I think this does open us up to a lot of like bow builds, also probably using sharpshooter, of course. So, like I said, you can do things like, you know, fire your bow or fire a hand crossbow and then draw a rapier. The Echo Knight could then use the rapier for its attack if you wanted to. But you could also make some like crazy kiting builds where you don't really worry too much about the Echo Knight's attack. If it gets in an attack, then great, you know. If it's in that opportunity where you can like, hey, I could actually draw my rapier and he could hit something. That's nice. But you could also just do stuff where you just teleport around the battlefield and nobody can actually close on you very well because instead of using your Echo to attack, you kind of keep them off to the side somewhere, and then when somebody tries to close on you, you just swap places, keep shooting, they try to close on you again, you swap places, keep shooting. If they kill him, you just summon another one, like, you know, away from you again. Keep swapping, keep shooting. And that does kind of appeal to me. This character who can just like kite everybody. And don't forget, you can also use 15 feet of your own, well, you lose 15 feet of your movement, but you can still use the rest of your movement even after teleporting. So there are some options there. I will say one more thing that I should have mentioned earlier, but this is some of the best advice I could give you. Because your echoes last until you summon new ones or incapacitated until they get destroyed, etc., you should always have an echo up. Don't like start a fight and then be in the first round and go, I'm going to summon an echo with my bonus action. That echo should already be up, and you should already be able to use it in that opening round of combat for whatever you want to do. This is especially good if you decided to take, like I said, like maybe 2 levels of Barbarian. Because now you're not having to use your bonus action to summon your echo in the opening round. You could be using that bonus action to rage instead, and your echo is already there, right? And of course, your echo does not count as a spell. It doesn't, you're not concentrating on anything, so there's no issues there with Barbarian Rage either, right? So always have your echo up, always have it ready, just in case, you know. You never know when a fight's going to start necessarily. And why waste your bonus action in that opening round summoning it when it could have already been in place? I don't mind the idea, like I said, of using a hand crossbow either. It does get kind of awkward. You have to start stowing weapons and whatnot. But the plus side of this is that it's really only going to happen like maybe once in the combat type of thing where this is going to interfere. And because you can only use this ability a number of times per day equal to your Constitution mod, at least until you get to 18th level, of course, right? It means that it's not like this is going to be happening every round where you want your echo to attack, but then all of a sudden you're like, oh, but he needs a melee weapon and I don't have my melee weapon, or I already used my actions up and now I've got like things everywhere, or I've got my rapier still in my hand and now I can't use my hand crossbow and my bonus action or whatever, right? Like that's really only going to be a thing that happens under those circumstances. So I don't actually think that the idea of going hand crossbow with crossbow expert and sharpshooter is off the table, and it's still a decent option. Like I said, always have your echo up though, so that you don't have to use as many bonus actions to summon it, and at the very least you're going to get that bonus action in the opening round to fire with still, right? Because I'm really against the idea of 2-weapon fighting on this character, since that's just constantly going to be competing anyways, and it is generally weaker than, say, crossbow expert with sharpshooter, right? Which does require 2 feats, mind you. It's not like that's free, right? But it's still much more damage overall generally. So that is probably the way I'd go if I really want to make a Dex Echo Knight. So, like I said, I would probably start as like custom lineage or variant human. I would probably start with the crossbow expert feat right off the bat. I lean towards that instead of sharpshooter because A, you only have the 1 attack around at first level, and B, your dex probably isn't maxed yet. Well, unless you rolled for stats, I guess, right? But you're probably sitting at 16, maybe 18 if you want custom lineage, right? And, oh no, actually it's still going to be 17 because you're not going to be able to take a feat that'll boost it. So you're going to be sitting at 16 or 17, somewhere in that range. Your proficiency bonus is only +2. You will have the archery fighting style, so at least there is that right at level 1. But it means that if you're using sharpshooter plus all that, you've only got a +2 to hit. That's not great. I'd rather just have the extra attack around. Level 3, you'll get my Echo Knight. That could cause some issues with sharpshooter, but overall, I think you can make it work. And then at level 4, I'm either going to boost my dex or take sharpshooter at that point would be my plan. Like I said, I think the dex could still work. I think it's still very viable. And there are, like I said, using your Echo Knight to get around like objects or something like that, or even if like something's like physically like just full cover, you could always, or maybe you're like barred by like a wall or something, or a window or something, you could just put your Echo Knight up in the air and then fire. Why not? He does say he can move up to 30 feet in any direction, so I'm assuming he can hover. He doesn't walk, really, so maybe I'm wrong on that one. You won't want to check with your DM. But either way, that could be a potential solution for you. You know, see over walls and then fire from that location or something. I think that a 2-weapon fighter could work still, but in general, 2-weapon fighting does not scale as well as a lot of these other fighting styles, I guess we'll just call them. I don't want to get them confused with the actual fighting styles, but you know what I mean. Like great weapons, with great weapon mastery, ranged weapons with sharpshooter versus the dual wielder 2-weapon fighter. The 2-weapon fighter generally doesn't scale as well at higher levels because the damage multipliers for these others just get ridiculous once you start adding in extra attacks, right? So, you know, there is that. Anyways, I seem to be losing my voice again. I don't know why this keeps happening lately, but those are my thoughts on the Echo Knight. Our next video, we're going to be returning to our series on the multi-class and tier list, and we are going to be dealing with Monk. So I'm excited, I guess, but also concerned. A lot of you know my thoughts on monks, but I think that monk as your main class, if you're just dipping something else, is definitely the way to go in general with multi-classes. Monks offer far less as a dip than they do as a main class, I think. Which is even more sad in some ways. But whatever. Every video lately has just ended with me taking pot shots at monks. And I'm really sorry, monks. I don't mean to do that. I just keep mentioning this video and then I keep thinking about how much I really dislike certain aspects of the monk class. Anyways, enough monks. Until next video. That's everything. Those are my thoughts on this. Feel free to like, subscribe, comment, ring the bell for notifications. Of course, most importantly, like I always say, leave me your comments in the comments section. I look forward to reading them all. And I will see you next time. Bye.